Hey guys, I'm back with a new video. In the previous video we learned about arrays and iterables. So in this video let us discuss about some very common methods that give a stack and queue like behavior to arrays. So we know that stack is a leaf-4 data structure, means that whatever goes into the stack at last is the first one to come out, and queue is a fee-4 data structure, which means whatever goes into the queue first is the very first element to come out. So let us see these methods which will help us to add or remove elements from the array. So what I will do is I will define a new constant in my arrays.js. So I'll say const games, and I will define two games inside this array, Call of Duty and Need for Speed. Okay, so what I want to do with this array is that I will use the push method on the games array in order to add a new game to the array. So I will say games dot push, and I will add a new game, road rash. So this is the new element that I want to add at the last position of my array of games. And what it does is this method will return us the length of the new array after this modification or mutation. So you need to understand that push is a mutator method. So basically when you're working with your original array, you are applying the push operation on the games. So you are adding a new element to the existing array. Okay, so you're directly mutating it. So this returns us the length of our games array. So I'll store that in a constant, and I will log the games to the console and the length of games to the console. So back in my browser, let us see the output. Okay, so we are getting 3 as the length of the games because we just added a new element at the end in our array of games. And the new array looks like this. It has 3 elements: Call of Duty, Need for Speed and Road Rash. Okay, so let us proceed further. So what I will do is, an important takeaway from this is that push will always add an element to the end of the array. If you want to add an element at the beginning of the array, then what we can do is we can make use of the unshift method. So now I want to add a new game at the beginning of the array. I will use the unshift method, and here in IntelliSense you can see it basically insert new elements at the start of an array. So I will say Half-Life, and then I will log the games to the console. And let me leave a comment for you here. So push is a mutator method to add a new element at the end of the array, and it returns us the length of the array after mutation, which in this case is pushing an element at the end position. Okay, so next, unshift is also a mutator method to add a new element at the start of the array, and I think it doesn't return any parameter, so let us leave it. So moving further, let us discuss about another 2 methods for removing. Okay, so these are the shift method and the pop method. So sometimes you also want to remove the elements. For that we have simple methods to remove the first or the last element from the array. To remove the last element from the array, we can simply make use of the pop method. So let me show you this. So pop method is also a mutator method to remove the last element of the array. So I will say games.pop, and I will say const store whatever gets returned from this. I will store that in a constant called removed item. Let us log the removed item to the console. Let us see the status of the games after this mutation. So console.log games, and let us go back to the browser to see the output. Okay, so this is the element that got popped off. Okay, So before the mutation, which is the pop operation. Before the pop operation, we had row dash at the end position. After the pop, the status of the array looks like this. Row dash is no longer there in the array. Okay, so with the pop operation, you basically start from the right end of the array. You look at the last element, simply remove it off, and then it auto decrements the length of the array by 1. Okay, so it mutates your original array. So let us learn about its counterpart, which is the shift method, that does the same thing but from the beginning of the array. That means from the left end of the array. So one thing you need to understand is that unshift and push methods, they also return us something. Like I showed you, it is returning us the length of the games. Okay, and same for unshift as well. Okay, so do take a note of that as well. They return us a number which is the new length of the array, and therefore if you require them, you can also store them in separate variables. So we can of course also remove the element from the beginning of the array by using the shift method. So let me show you this. I will say const first item and games.shift, and then I will log the first item to the console.log first item. Let us log the games to the console. So back in my browser, let us check the output. So now as you can see, the first element got removed from the starting position, that is from the left end. You picked up the very first element, you removed it from the original array. Original array definitely got mutated, and now the length of the array got decremented by 1. So one word about the performance, the shift and the unshift operations, they are slower compared to the push and pop operations, because push and pop always work on the last item of the array. They do not touch any other items in the array. They just add an element to the array or remove it from the end. Thus these methods will help you to add or remove elements from both the sides of the array. Now what if you want to add or manipulate items at different places inside the array, and not just from the beginning or at the end? For that you can make use of direct index access. So let us see that. So back in my Visual Studio Code, what I will do is I will simply do direct index access, and I will say games1. Okay, so whatever game is present at the index 1, I want to change that to changed. And let us log the games to the console. Now this indexing is an order of 1 operation. It takes constant time to basically go at a specific location, change the data that is residing at that location, and gives you back the modified array. Okay, so if you log the games to the console, you can see the need for speed is now overwritten by changed. So by this method, we have replaced the second element with a new game. Now if you want to insert an element between Call of Duty and changed, we have a different method to do that, called as the splice method, because we are now trying to insert a new element between two elements, and not at the starting position or at the end position, which we did earlier. Okay, so but accessing an element using indexing is a bad way of mutation. Okay, you are directly mutating an element using indexing. It's not a good way, but this way is bad, as you know, because you may target an index which might not exist within the array and hence is empty. So the better way is to make use of the splice method. So let us see that in action. So with the splice method, we can insert an element between two elements. Splice is a very useful method that allows us to add all kind of things with the array. Now splice method can have two versions. In the very first version, it can take a starting index and a delete count, which represents how many items you want to remove starting from the current index. So let me show you this. So back in my browser, in my Visual Studio Code, splice method, games.splice, So what I want to do is I want to add a new game, okay, between the two elements Call of Duty and changed. So I will say start from the index 1, okay, then delete count is specified as 0 because I don't want to remove any element. I just want to add a new element starting from index 1, and we will shift the element that is at the location index 1 by 1 position to the right. So I will say road rash, and let us log the games to the console. So as you can see, at the index 1 I performed a splice operation. I want to add a new element to my array. Now road rash got added to the array, and this element changed, got shifted 1 position to the right. So this is how our original array now looks like after the mutation, after the splice operation. Okay, so this is how we can make use of splice to insert an element between two games, or inserting an element between any two elements. Okay, so it exists only on arrays and not on iterables and array-like objects. But you can take this as one of the reasons why you may want to convert an iterable or an array-like object to an array. Okay, and now you can see this. It does insert a new game between two games. So what happened here is the second element changed that we previously had didn't got deleted. Instead, a new element road rash took its place and shifted changed to the right by 1 position. So for deleting the road rash game that we just added, we can also make use of the splice method in its different version. So I can say splice for deletion. I will say games.splice, start from index 1 and remove the first element that you encounter while performing this operation. Okay, and then log the games to the console. So let us go back to the browser to see the output. So now you can see road rash is no longer there and it got deleted. So this is how we can use splice operation to basically insert a new element between any two elements, or we can also delete an element. So it does both things. Now of course you can remove more than one element. You can remove as many elements as you want. Now if you want to completely empty the array of games, you can simply write games.splice 0, and this will remove the entire array. It will completely destroy the content that is there within the array. Okay, and the array length will get reduced to 0. Okay, so this will delete all the element till the end starting from the index 0, and whatever element it encounters starting from index 0 will get deleted until the length gets reduced to 0. Now splice also returns us something. It returns us the removed elements. Okay, so do take a note of that as well. Now what I will do is, one thing you need to understand is that splice can also make use of negative indices. So it can take a negative value for the index, and what it will then do is it will go from the end of the array and look from the right and delete the specified number of elements. So let us see an example for that also. So in the console what I will do is I will write const last game games.splice start from the very right end. Okay, so what I'm telling it is, you go to the right end, you pick one element from the right end and simply remove that element when you are traversing the array from right to left. So just go to the right end, pick the last element because the delete count, as you can see, is 1, and simply remove it and store that in a constant called last game. So log the last game to the console, and you can see we are now having the last game got removed. If I log this to the console games, so we are now having only a single element, which is Call of Duty. So this is how we can use negative indices in splice operation. So this was all about this video. In the next video, we'll learn more about such methods, and then we will move forward to higher order methods. So if you're loving the content, do subscribe to the channel and share it with your friends and colleagues.